Good morning, class. Professor Kittleton here. I want to take a moment to introduce you to Unit 2. We are in the Old Testament canon, canonical development, and the history of the scriptures. We're going to talk about where we got the Old Testament from, where we got the New Testament from. Did they fall out of the sky like the Mormon doctrine, or did a single individual stumble upon them as a testament of Abraham or so forth? Some reluctantly use the word variants of Christianity claim. Where do they come from? We are all familiar with the theories and the beliefs, the truth that the Pentateuch came from Moses. But what about the prophets, the Nevi'im? What about the writings, Ketuvim, the Torah, the Hebrew concept of the Bible is the Tanakh, the Torah, the Nevi'im, and the Ketuvim. The Ketuvim being the writings being fixed around 100, the Nevi'im being fixed around 200 BC. When I say 100 for the Ketuvim, I mean AD. And the Ketuvim, the Nevi'im being around 200 BC, at least by then, maybe earlier. These dates are the latest it could be. It could have been earlier. The Tanakh, the Torah, around at least 400 BC. But we're going to talk a little about that. I'm going to expose you to some of that material, early on material, and as we begin studying that, and not just for the Old Testament, but also for the New Testament. You know, we have the Marcionite and the other M word. Monarchianism is all that's coming to my head. Monarchianism and Mephibosheth. That's the only two M words I can think of out of the Bible. Mutorian canon. That's it. Sorry. Marcion and Mutorian canon and how they impacted the development of the New Testament canon. Jesus didn't write any scriptures. You've heard it said to you, but I say to you. He was an oral teacher. He didn't sit down and write out scrolls and hand these off to his followers and say, here, take this and read it, and he could go and do likewise. Hear my teaching, go and do likewise. And then his teaching, as the one who has authority, radically shaped the development of the known world. And every time it came every time it came against or into the unknown world, it radically shaped that world. So we still see that today as it goes into these areas that are not part of our known world, and it makes a radical impact. How do we get the New Testament? Where did it start? Were the disciples sitting around one day and said, well, Peter, you're getting old, and Paul, you're getting old too, and John, you got a few years left, but we don't know when, because Jesus shut Peter down after on the seashore and said, it's not time for you to worry about what's going to happen with John. You focus on feeding my sheep. So no, it didn't happen like that. So where did they get the scripture? So we're going to talk about that, introduce you some foundational developments in the development of the New Testament canon. We're going to talk about some of the principles of apostolicity, of canonicity, and one of those being apostolicity, antiquity, orthodoxy, reception by the churches, and spiritual value. You'll have that. That's from slide 25. I want you to think about at least two things. The impact of tradition. I know we tend to, in thinking about the New Testament, Old Testament and New Testament scriptures, we tend to think about, us just reading a book. There were, 500 books in circulation that could have been the Old Testament scripture. So the leaders just walked over and grabbed some, arbitrarily picked some, and said, okay, this God spoke through this. It doesn't really work like that. Then we may have that idea. Maybe that's not our idea. I know in the New Testament development, there are the Gospels. There are the various factors on how they connect to Jesus, apostles, how they connect to apostleship. But there's also In the New Testament, I mentioned Muratorian and see, I'm gonna forget the other guy now. Montanus. I feel like I'm saying that wrong. Marcion. See, too many M's. There's Marcion and there's Montanus. Marcion in 144, they put him out of the church. He was an early Gnostic. It's the special knowledge. Some believe that, well, commentators kind of take a consensus that First John was written to combat an early Gnosticism of a dual God, the separation of body and spirit. But we're not going to talk a whole lot about that here. If you take me from the New Testament, we're going to talk a little bit about it. We see the Marcion development actually moves forward the development of the New Testament canon, because what everyone was using already in practice, say the church in Antioch, the church in Jerusalem, the church in Rome, the church in Alexandria on the bottom. So these different areas were using different, I don't say different gospels. I'm not going to say that, but that's not accurate. But the scriptures were making their way around these areas. And the particular church, due to its demographic, due to its geographical location, due to its which apostle visited there. Some say Matthew wrote his epistle to the Jews in Antioch. Some think Mark wrote his epistle to his gospel to the church in Rome. Some say he wrote it to Alexandria, which is in Egypt. But as these books were going around, people were using them. But then Marcion comes along and says, "Wait a minute. I don't think so. Now you have some Luke and that Old Testament deity. He's really not the same God." So the church is like, we have to start developing. So it really, think of it like this. Paul had a holistic set of doctrines, theological doctrines. And the Apostle Paul, if you ask him to, would have probably sat down and says, "Okay, here's my doctrine of Jesus. Here's my doctrine of God. But we don't see that developed in Pauline literature. We see contextual sections of theological development for particular places. Colossae, a theological treatise to the church in Ephesus. In Ephesus chapter 1, verse 3. And then here's what you should do as a result of that. The church in Rome. Pick up the book of Romans, and you really don't see some of the similar stuff. You do see some of it. The Galatians has some similar issues. Philippians a little bit. The Galatians and Romans issue is probably because some similar context, Jewish-Gentile relations. And in Galatians, we know for sure that there was this false gospel, this Judaizing that came up, and it seems to be we have historical record of an early fallout between the early Jews and Christians over a guy named Christus, which is probably Christ, in 48. And as a result of that, the emperor Claudius, I believe that's right, Claudius expels all the Jews from the city. And so, but Paul is writing to address that. So we see when Marcion, something similar, in that there is but instead of a letter being written to address this issue, the church says, we don't need to address this with a letter only. We have to figure out what we declare as canonical. And what is just, helpful. Shepherd from Us is a helpful book. The Didache is a really helpful book for being a Christian, especially in the early century world. Some of the other literature is really helpful, but is it God-breathed? Some of the early developments with that were Pauline literature, but that's just my ad lib. That you can't really get that on PowerPoint. That would take a lot of PowerPoints to put up. But I want you to think about the the development of the New Testament canon that way. Sorry for coughing. I had an earlier video where I coughed like 8 times and I had to delete it. So I want you to think about the development of both New Testament books and Old Testament, New Testament canon, Old Testament canon, as they weren't just sitting around, I wonder which one we're going to use today. These books were already in practice. So it's not a creation of something as much as it is a refinement of something. We take oil out of the ground and we refine it. And then when we refine it, we get gasoline, we get diesel fuel, we get engine oil, we get kerosene, we get propane, we get other petroleum products. So, and that refining process produces various products. Well, the refining of the New Testament is the process of not burning everything that doesn't work, but understanding the influence of tradition, such as in the development of the Apocrypha and how it was continues to be an impactful tradition in the Roman Catholic Church, and trimming it down early on into, okay, this is inspired, this is God breathed, this has spiritual transformative power. This makes a difference, in a radical difference in the people's lives when they read it, when they hear it. The Spirit of God still speaks through this book. That's what. And this is a book, Old Testament Textual Criticism, if you're interested. Great book about Old Testament textual criticism, about the Dead Sea Scrolls, the transmission of the Old Testament in Hebrew, some of the early Paleo-Hebrew script. And actually, one of the most interesting parts of the book is it is a study of textual criticism applied to the book of Ruth. Let me look that up real quick for you. I think it's 133, I believe. So he'll walk through the book of Ruth. You'll see right here. I don't write it right here. And then he'll walk over again. Ruth 1:8, or Ruth 1:1. Then there's a textual variant for Ruth 1:8. This book is great, but it's not inspired. The Spirit of God might use the text in the book Another book right here, The Lost World of Scripture, John Walton and Brent Sandy. They talk about the development of the oral nature of books. Great book. Interested about, it's kind of laid out in propositions. He talks about New Testament textual criticism. We'll talk about that a little later. They have 21 propositions. What they do a good job of is talking about the oral nature and the literary nature of our culture compared to the oral nature of their, and how that affects genre, how that affects inerrancy, and how we must be careful of laying our Western standards upon the text and saying, fit this or not die. Okay, a little dramatic there. A lot of the New Testament non-canonical literature is inspirational, but not inspired. Exhortative, but not inspired. So think of the development of canonicity as that refining process. Okay. I want to just walk through those books, talk a little bit about Marcion, talk about the impact of tradition, and I'm going to let you look at the literature now. And remember to post. Keep doing what you're doing. Everyone's doing great with the developments as the class moves forward.